If there's one thing I've learned after 3 decades of working with couples, it's this. There is one question that instantly reveals whether a man is falling in love with you. And most women hear it, but they don't understand it. They end up missing the clearest sign that he's already imagining them in his future. I'm going to tell you something that will completely change the way you interpret men. When a man falls in love, his brain undergoes a real neurological transformation. He stops thinking only about the present and begins something I call future emotional projection. And that shows up in very specific questions. Today I'm going to reveal 3 questions that no man asks by accident. If he's asking you these, it means something deep is happening in his emotional world. Let me explain something I've observed thousands of times in my practice. There is a real neurological difference between a man who is physically interested and one who is developing deep emotional bonds. Neuroscience has shown us that when a man feels only physical attraction, the areas of his brain related to immediate reward and pleasure are primarily activated. His prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for long-term thinking, remains relatively inactive. In this context, when it's only attraction, his brain functions in present mode. He thinks about the here and now, tonight's dinner, the weekend plans, immediate intimacy. It's what I call instant gratification thinking. But when he's falling in love, that's when everything dramatically changes. His prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and long-term thinking, is activated in a different way. This is where future emotional projection begins. He starts to imagine scenarios with you that go beyond the present moment. And this manifests through very specific questions that reflect this neurological shift. The male brain in love needs information to build what we in psychology call relational cognitive maps. It needs to understand not just who you are now, but who you could be in his future. But here's something experience has taught me. Most women misinterpret these questions. They hear them on a surface level, without grasping the emotional and neurological weight they actually carry. It's like listening to a symphony, but only paying attention to the most obvious instruments, missing the complexity of the entire composition. And this leads me to something I constantly observe in my practice. Women who learn to recognize and respond appropriately to these questions end up in significantly deeper and longer-lasting relationships. Because these questions aren't just casual curiosity, they are the male brain's unconscious attempts to assess long-term emotional, intellectual, and life compatibility. The first question might sound like something you'd hear in a job interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And here's the first mistake most women make. They think it's a casual question, something he asks anyone, or just a way to fill an awkward silence. Let me be brutally honest with you. That question is neither casual nor insignificant. It's one of the clearest manifestations that his brain is operating in shared future mode. When a man asks you about your 5-year future, he's not making small talk. He's evaluating long-term emotional and life compatibility in a way he probably doesn't even fully realize himself. Let me explain the deep psychology behind this. The male brain, when in love, needs to create what we call shared future maps. It's an unconscious but powerful process where his mind begins to project future scenarios that include the woman he's falling for. He can't allow himself to invest emotionally in someone without having some idea of where they're going together. It's as if his brain needs a kind of emotional insurance before fully giving himself over. This question reflects something much deeper. He's already seeing you in his future. He's already mentally projecting scenarios in which the two of you are building something meaningful together. Think of it this way. A man can have casual encounters for years without ever asking any woman about her 5-year plans. Because when it's just physical attraction, the future doesn't matter. Only the immediate present does. But when he starts falling in love, his brain literally cannot help but think in terms of the future. It's as if a neurological switch is flipped, and suddenly he needs to know whether you're compatible, not just now, but in the years to come. And this brings me to something I constantly observe. The emotionally unavailable man lives in the immediate present. He cares about weekend fun, momentary pleasure, instant gratification. He'll never ask you about your long-term goals because he simply isn't thinking long-term with you. But the man who is falling in love, he needs to know whether you want the same things in life, whether you value the same things, whether your visions of the future can align in a meaningful way. He needs to know if you're also building towards something, if you have purpose and direction, if you're someone he can imagine growing and evolving with. Because let me tell you something I've learned after decades of working with couples. A mature man doesn't ask about your future unless he's seriously considering being part of it. In fact, when he asks this question, he's revealing something vulnerable about himself. He's silently admitting that he's thinking about you in terms of long-term commitment. So when he asks you this question, don't take it lightly. It's a direct window into his deepest emotional intentions. It's his way of saying, I'm imagining a future that could include you. Are you imagining something similar? And here's the crucial part. How you respond can determine whether that connection deepens or completely falls apart. If you respond vaguely or evasively, saying things like, I don't know, just taking it day by day, or we'll see what happens, you're signaling that you're not operating on the same emotional wavelength. But if you respond with authenticity and clarity about your goals and vision, if you show that you also have the ability to think long-term, you're validating his emotional projection and strengthening the connection. The second question requires even more emotional courage on his part. What do you feel for me? This question represents something many women don't fully understand. For a man, showing emotional vulnerability is an act of extreme trust and courage, and let me explain why this question is so significant from a psychological perspective. Men have been conditioned from childhood to protect their emotions, to not expose themselves, to remain strong and in control. From a young age, they receive messages like, boys don't cry, you have to be tough, don't be sensitive. This conditioning creates what I call the male emotional armor, a set of psychological defenses that shield their vulnerability. So when he asks you directly what you feel for him, he's doing something revolutionary. He's consciously removing that emotional armor and exposing himself to the risk of being hurt. He's saying, without words, I care about you so much that I'm willing to risk my male pride, my image of strength, to know where I stand with you. And this brings me to something that completely changed my perspective. This question is, in reality, a desperate search for emotional safety. A man in love lives in a state of vulnerability that he rarely experiences in other areas of life. At work, in sports, in friendships, he can maintain a certain level of emotional control. But when he's in love, that sense of control vanishes. He needs to know if he's investing his emotions in the right place. He needs validation that he's not the only one feeling this deep and transformative connection. Because let me tell you something I've seen time and time again in my practice. When a man truly falls in love, he becomes vulnerable in a way that can feel completely foreign to him. And that vulnerability scares him. It's as if suddenly his emotional well-being depends on someone else. And that can be terrifying for someone who's used to being emotionally self-sufficient. So this question is his way of creating a space of mutual trust, of saying, if you also feel something deep, we can keep building this together, but I need to know so I can continue opening up emotionally. It's important to understand that when a man asks this question, he's in a moment of maximum emotional vulnerability. He's literally putting his heart in your hands and hoping you'll handle it with care. And here's where many women go wrong. They respond evasively or minimize the importance of the moment. They say things like, "I like you," or "everything's fine," responses that are emotionally neutral and don't give him the reassurance he's seeking. Or worse, some women interpret this vulnerability as weakness and lose respect for him. They don't understand that what they're witnessing is not weakness, but the most authentic expression of male emotional strength. Because let me tell you something fundamental. A weak man will never ask you what you feel for him. A weak man will avoid that conversation at all costs because he cannot handle the possibility of an answer he doesn't like. Only an emotionally mature and strong man has the courage to ask that question, because only he has the inner strength to deal with whatever answer you might give. You, who have lived through mature relationships, know that these moments of emotional honesty are what define the future of a relationship. They are the forks in the road where we decide whether we move toward deep intimacy or remain on the surface of human connection. When he asks you this question, he's creating an opportunity for both of you to move to a deeper level of emotional intimacy. It's an invitation to take off the masks and connect from a place of total authenticity. The third category of questions may seem the least important, but it's perhaps the most revealing in terms of long-term emotional commitment. Did you eat? Did you get home safely? How was your day? On the surface, they may sound like basic courtesy, questions any polite person would ask, normal social conversation with no deeper meaning. But here's what I discovered after years of observing male behavior patterns. These small, consistent questions are manifestations of something I call persistent emotional care. Let me explain why these seemingly simple questions are actually powerful indicators of love. When a man asks you these questions consistently, he's revealing that he thinks about you when you're not together, that your physical and emotional well-being takes up space in his mind throughout the day. And this is especially significant because men, neurologically speaking, tend to be more compartmentalized than women. They can separate different areas of their lives more efficiently: work, family, relationships, sports, each in its own mental drawer. This compartmentalization allows them to focus their full attention on one task without being distracted by thoughts from other parts of their life. So when he consistently steps out of his mental compartments to ask about your day, your food, your safety, he's showing that you've transcended those compartments, that you occupy a permanent space in his consciousness. It's as if you've created your own space in his mind that is always active, always present, no matter what else he is doing in other parts of his life. And think of it this way: a man can be completely immersed in an important work presentation, but if he's in love with you, a part of his mind is wondering whether you got home safely. He might be watching a football game with his friends, but his phone is close by because he wants to make sure you're okay. Let me tell you something that experience has taught me. Men love primarily through actions, not words. While women tend to express love verbally, men express it through protective and caring behaviors. And these small, consistent questions are developing actions of love. They are his way of taking care of you, even when he can't be physically present. They are like emotional anchors that keep him connected to you throughout the day. They are his way of being present in your life, even when work, distance, or responsibilities keep you apart. When he asks you if you ate, he's not just being polite. He's expressing his need to know that you're taking care of yourself, that you're nourishing your body, that you're okay. When he asks if you got home safely, he's revealing that your safety is a constant concern for him, that he can't fully relax until he knows you're safe. When he asks how your day was, he's trying to connect with you emotionally, to understand your inner world, to be part of your daily experiences, even if he didn't share them with you physically. I've seen incredible women lose deep connections because they minimize the importance of these small acts of care, because they interpreted them as superficial, routine, or lacking emotional meaning, when in reality they were clear signs of a heart that was gradually opening. Some women even get annoyed by these constant questions, interpreting them as control or possessiveness, when in fact they are expressions of love in development. The difference lies in the tone and the consistency. A controlling man asks these questions from a place of insecurity and a need to dominate. A man in love asks them from a place of genuine care and emotional connection. There's a bonus question that, when it shows up, is practically a wordless declaration of love. Do you want to meet my family? This invitation represents something that transcends everything else, its full integration into his emotional and social world. For most men, family represents their most intimate emotional core. It's where they are most vulnerable, most authentic, most themselves. It's where they take off all the social and professional masks. When he invites you into that sacred space, he's making several simultaneous statements that go far beyond a simple social gathering. First, he's saying he fully trusts you, that he believes you will treat his family with respect and kindness, that you won't judge him for his family dynamics or background. Second, he's declaring that he sees you as someone permanent in his life. You don't introduce someone to your family if you consider them temporary or casual. Family is for the people who are staying. Third, he's ready for the most important people in his life to meet you and potentially accept you into his inner circle. And this brings me to something I constantly observe in my practice. A man can have casual relationships for years, even regular sexual relationships, without ever introducing anyone to his inner circle. But when he's in love, he wants to integrate his worlds. He wants his life to have emotional coherence, and that coherence includes the people he loves knowing one another. It's as if he needs to create an emotional ecosystem where all his most important relationships can coexist harmoniously. There's also an element of validation in this invitation. He wants his family to meet you because unconsciously he's seeking their approval of his choice. He wants the people whose opinions he values most to confirm that he's chosen well. After everything we've explored, I want to leave you with a fundamental reflection that could completely change how you interpret male relationships. Not every man who compliments you, spends time with you, or even is physically affectionate, is falling in love. Many men can be charming, attentive, and affectionate without it meaning deep emotional commitment. But a man who asks you these questions, especially repeatedly and consistently, is, consciously or unconsciously, building emotional bridges toward a future with you. He's revealing that his brain has shifted the way it processes you. You're no longer just an attractive or interesting woman. You've become someone with whom his unconscious mind is building a future. And here's what's crucial. The way you respond to these questions can either strengthen those emotional bridges or burn them down completely. Let me be brutally honest with you. I've seen too many intelligent, beautiful, and valuable women lose genuine connections because they didn't recognize these critical moments, because they responded from fear, distrust, or simply a lack of understanding of what was really happening. I completely understand that after being hurt in previous relationships, it can be tempting to protect yourself by giving evasive answers or staying emotionally distant. That's a natural and understandable defense mechanism. But here's the cruel paradox of mature love. Exactly when you most need to open up emotionally is when you're most afraid to do it. These moments of mutual vulnerability are exactly where the deepest and most authentic connections are forged. They're the moments where two people decide whether they're going to build something real together or remain on the surface of human connection. Authenticity, emotional reciprocity, and genuine presence are fundamental in these crucial moments. When he asks you, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" don't give an answer you think he wants to hear. Give him your truth. Share your real dreams, your authentic goals, your genuine fears about the future. Because if he's truly falling in love, he's not falling for an edited version of you. He's falling for who you really are, with all your complexities, ambitions, and contradictions. When he asks you what you feel for him, don't minimize or exaggerate. If you feel something real, have the courage to name it. If you're still unsure, have the honesty to say that you're in the process of discovering it. Mature men value emotional honesty over right answers. They prefer to know where they truly stand with you, even if that means facing uncertainty, rather than living in a fantasy built on diplomatic responses. And when he asks those small questions about your well-being, recognize them for what they truly are: signs of love in development. Respond with genuine gratitude. Let him know that you appreciate his care. But more importantly, reciprocate. Ask him how his day was. Show interest in his well-being. Show him that he also occupies space in your mind when you're not together. Because I'm going to be brutally honest with you, if he's asking these questions and you're not willing to respond with the same emotional honesty, if you're not ready to reciprocate that vulnerability, you're missing an opportunity to build something real and lasting. And this is especially important for mature women because you no longer have the time or energy for superficial emotional games. You've lived long enough to know the difference between fleeting attraction and genuine love. You deserve and are capable of recognizing authentic love when it shows up in your life. But you also have the responsibility to respond to that love with the same authenticity and courage he is showing by asking these questions. These questions are the signs that authentic love is knocking at your door. It doesn't arrive with background music or dramatic declarations like in the movies. It arrives in quiet moments, in sincere questions, in genuine curiosity about your inner world. It arrives in the man who wants to know where you see yourself in 5 years, because he's already seeing you in his. It arrives in the man who has the courage to ask you what you feel for him, because he's ready to hear your truth, whatever it may be. It arrives in the man who asks if you've eaten, because your well-being has become part of his own. The final question, after everything we've explored, is this: are you ready to recognize love when it shows up this way? Are you prepared to respond with the same vulnerability and authenticity? Take a deep, reflective pause, because here's the truth I've learned after decades of working with couples. Mature love is not an emotion that simply happens. It's a conscious decision that two people make again and again. It's the decision to be vulnerable when it would be easier to protect yourself. It's the decision to be honest when it would be more comfortable to be diplomatic. It's the decision to build something real when it would be simpler to keep things superficial. And these questions we've explored are invitations to make those decisions together. When he asks you about your future, he's inviting you to decide whether you want to build in the same direction. When he asks you what you feel for him, he's inviting you to decide whether you will be vulnerable together. When he asks about your day, he's inviting you to decide whether you will care for each other. Mature love doesn't arrive with fanfare or dramatic declarations. It arrives in sincere questions, in genuine curiosity about your inner world, in a deep desire to build something real with you. And now that you know how to recognize these signs, I hope you have the emotional wisdom to value them when they appear in your life. I hope you have the courage to respond from your deepest authenticity. And I hope you have the confidence to believe that you deserve a love that arrives in this way, quiet, genuine, and consistent.